Guys, massive news in British boxing, massive news in world boxing. Kell Brook will be fighting Gennady Golovkin for the middleweight championship of the world. Now let me say, there's been 2 times since I've started this YouTube channel that I have felt genuine shock at an announcement. The first one was actually relatively recently. Amir Khan, Canelo Alvarez, when that was announced. This is the second one. And even though it's a fight that actually has been discussed in the past, and Kell Brook said it's a fight that he's wanted in the past, it's not been a fight that was really on the radar recently. There's been debate for weeks as to whether Kell Brook will fight Vargas. There's been debates for weeks as to whether Golovkin will fight Eubank, and now it's come to this. Now I'm going to talk about this in this video in probably a good bit of depth. I'm probably going to ramble a little bit. A lot of this video is going to focus on Chris Eubank, Eddie Hearn, Jesse Vargas, etc. So if you just wanted to hear the announcement, Kell Brook versus Gennady Golovkin, there's the announcement. If you want to hear the long rambling bit, stick with me from here on in. But I have been discussing all day via Twitter about the Eubank Golovkin fight with various people, probably 10 people or so I've been going back and forth with. And for people who weren't following that, which will be the majority of people watching this, let me just read out some of the tweets. And this is from Chris Eubank Sr.'s verified account. He's put, at GGG Boxing, so this is a tweet to Gennady Golovkin. You were scared of us. No response from Tom Loeffler or Matchroom Boxing. He has then retweeted something from Spencer Fearon, saying the only fight I want to see is Chris Eubank Jr. and Gennady Golovkin. Now, bizarrely, Chris Eubank Sr. has retweeted it and copied in, and this isn't a joke, by the way, this is his verified Twitter account. He has copied in Ant and Dec, as in the 2 pint-sized Geordies who present Britain's Got Talent, amongst other things. Simon Cowell, as in the X Factor judge. David Beckham, that's right, as in the footballer. BBC Sports, BT Sport, ITV, Sky Sports Boxing, Matchroom Boxing. So, slightly bizarre, but Eubank's come out with those 2 tweets. And all day people have been saying, you know, I was actually surprised at the amount of people sticking up for Eubank. They were saying, oh, why is Eddie Hearn messing Eubank about? And I'm not referring to anyone in particular here, right? I've had so many conversations about this in the comment section to my videos, my Facebook, my Twitter. I've had so many conversations. So if you're one of the people I've had this back and forth with, I'm certainly not referring to you individually. But what I've been surprised about is why so many people were leaping to Eubank's defence here. Why do people believe that Eddie Hearn didn't want to make Eubank Golovkin? Eubank Golovkin was a massive fight. Eubank Golovkin was actually a far bigger fight and probably a far better fight than Kell Brook Golovkin is. You know, for a start, Eubank, I believe, to be a more marketable person than Kell Brook. And secondly, the vast discrepancy in weight, which we'll come to later on in this video, wouldn't be such an issue. You know, Eubank and Golovkin are obviously the same weight class, whereas Kell Brook is a welterweight and Golovkin's a middleweight, as you guys know. So, I still believe, in a perfect world, Eddie Hearn would have made Eubank versus Golovkin. That is my firm belief. And I think the Eubanks have proved very difficult in negotiations. We have even heard that Eubank Sr. wanted to change the whole splits that Sky Sports offer their fighters, you know, and wanting Sky to take less money and the fighter to take more money. And that's all very noble, and, you know, fighters should get the money, not the broadcasters, whatever. But this is a business. And in terms of Eubank Jr.'s earnings and Eubank Jr.'s financial potential, it is as clear as day that in order for him to maximise his potential at this stage, he has to be a Sky Sports fighter. You know, the rumoured figures were that he was offered between £700,000 and £1 million to fight Billy Joe Saunders on Box Nation. Whereas the figures that have been flying around for the Golovkin fight on Sky Sports pay-per-view, £3 million. You know, the money for Eubank Jr. was on Sky Sports pay-per-view. And they haggled, they delayed, they negotiated for too long, in my opinion. And now you've got Chris Eubank Jr. taking to Twitter saying he wants to fight, saying Golovkin's running scared, saying Eddie Hearn's being a blocker. Let me say, I firmly do not believe that to be the case, in the strongest possible sense. I believe that Eubank Senior and Eubank Junior have messed around too much. They've spent too long delaying, too long negotiating, too long looking for extra portions of a cut, and they've made themselves unpleasant people to do business with. I believe that's the case. You know, let's look at the facts here. Eddie Hearn signed Chris Eubank Jr. on a 2-fight deal. The first fight was against Tom Duran. This is the second fight. Now, the Eubanks have shown they will literally flip from promoter to promoter. So, Eddie Hearn's opportunity to make the money of Eubanks is now. Eddie Hearn's opportunity to go out and maximise the revenue he can generate from Team Eubank is in the only fight remaining, which is the very, very next fight on the list. Now, do you believe that Eddie Hearn would turn down Eubank Golovkin? I personally do not. That is a mega fight. That is a fight that sells out any arena. That is a fight that I believe could do in excess of 500,000 pay-per-view buys. I believe the fight is that big. And also, Eddie Hearn is throwing someone to the wolves in Chris Eubank, who he doesn't have a long-term deal with. You know, with Kell Brook, he maybe has more of an interest in protecting Kell Brook's undefeated record, because there's a longevity to that business relationship. Whereas with the Eubanks, that longevity doesn't exist. I firmly believe Eddie Hearn would have made that fight if he had the opportunity to. I put all the blame on this fight not happening to the Eubanks. Golovkin, I don't believe for a second he wouldn't have taken the fight. Eddie Hearn, I don't believe for a second he would not have taken the fight. The money was there for Eddie Hearn right here, right now. We saw the Eubanks laying the groundwork for them to pull out of the fight. We saw the Eubanks laying the groundwork when they started saying, oh, if it doesn't happen, it's because of Sky Sports. You know, they're taking too much of the percentages. You know, this is the same arrangement where Anthony Joshua earned £3 million for fighting for a British title. You know, trust me, the money's there on Sky Sports pay-per-view. So, you know, I think what we've seen today from the Eubanks is desperation. Calling Eddie Hearn out on Twitter. They've even offered to do an interview with IFL TV, which they've blanked for years now. You know, I think what we've seen is one last throw of the dice from them. They've overplayed their hand massively. You know, and Chris Eubank Sr. has got to be a little bit careful, because I know he's got his fighter's best interests at heart, who on this occasion is his son. You know, I know he thrives off being this eccentric character, but he's making himself such an unpleasant person to deal with. He's actually put his son out of the two biggest fights in world boxing for him, which are Golovkin and Billy Joe Saunders. You know, Eubank's always going to have an opportunity to come back. He's always going to be a marketable guy. You know, but on this occasion, I think he's done himself out of that fight, if he ever wanted the fight in the first place. Now, I see on Twitter people are already saying, oh, this is Eddie Hearn. You know, Eddie Hearn has screwed over the Eubanks. Eddie Hearn's done it because it means there's more money in the pot for him. But let's not forget here, Eddie Hearn isn't some charitable boxing figure whose job is to put on the best fights in the world to make us fans happy. Eddie Hearn is running a completely independent business, right? That is not funded directly by our Sky Sports contributions. Eddie Hearn is running his own business. And my personal opinion is, if Eddie Hearn is taking a cut on the pay-per-view model for fights he's making, and that cut is acceptable to Anthony Joshua, that cut was acceptable to Bellew Cleverly, that cut was acceptable for Brooke Frankie Gavin, I don't see why it shouldn't be acceptable to Chris Eubank Jr. You know, this was the biggest fight, the biggest earner of Chris Eubank Jr.'s career by far. And for me, the Eubanks have squandered it. Make no mistake, the Eubanks have squandered it as far as I'm concerned. And that's my honest opinion. I'm sure people are going to hate on me in the chat. I'm sure people are going to say I'm an Eddie Hearn nut hugger. I'm sure people are going to say I'm just an absolute hater on the Eubanks. But I was one of these who was desperate to see the Eubank Golovkin fight. And that fight was there. That fight was there if the Eubanks wanted it. The truth is one of two things. Thing number one, they never wanted the Golovkin fight whatsoever, and they were using it to build up Eubank Jr.'s name, which is a definite possibility. Truth number two is that they did want the fight, but they were too greedy when it came to the negotiations, you know. And in terms of Chris Eubank Jr. coming up with crap just to boost out his own popularity, let's not forget this is the same Eubanks who are saying they may compete in the Olympics up till relatively recently. Chris Eubank Sr. just copied in Ant and Dec, Simon Cowell and David Beckham to his tweet. I mean, could you do anything more fame-hungry, more attention-seeking than copying in Ant and Dec, David Beckham and Simon Cowell, those bastions of the British boxing scene? You know, I think people need to be real here. This fight was available to the Eubanks. Why would Golovkin not take that fight? Seriously, why would Eddie Hearn not make that fight? You guys have got to understand, Eddie Hearn's relationship with Chris Eubanks ends after the next fight. This is his one opportunity to make money off the Eubanks. He wouldn't ignore that. Eddie Hearn is a money-making machine. Believe me on that. Now, Brook Vargas. Vargas is another one who I believe behaved like a bit of a mug here. An offer went out to Vargas, and obviously part of this went to his team. I'm not saying it all went out to Vargas, but the offer was valued in excess of $2 million. We were talking about this last night in the podcast. We believe that Vargas hasn't even earned $1 million from a fight before. This was his biggest payday by far. But again, another fighter who's overplayed his hand. And if next time he's got to go out and fight in the States for $300,000 or $400,000, he will rue the chance that he missed for a $2 million payday to him and his team over here in the UK. So I'm going to give some credit to some people now. I'm going to give credit to Eddie Hearn. I respect the way Eddie Hearn's played this. And if you don't like that, I don't care. That's my opinion. I think Eddie Hearn has done a good job here. I'm going to give credit to Kell Brook as well. I'm going to give immense credit to Kell Brook. Eddie Hearn has refused to be bullied by the demands of Chris Eubank Sr. Eddie Hearn has refused to bow to pressure, and what he has done here is made a very marketable fight, a very good fight, and he hasn't let a guy who has never fought on pay-per-view before, and who hasn't given him any commitment through a longevity of contract, he hasn't let a guy like that pull his pants down. So I give Eddie Hearn credit for that. I give Kell Brook immense credit for fighting Gennady Golovkin, an individual who is 2 weight classes above him, and an individual who is currently one of the most feared fighters in the planet. Do you know what? I'm not going to give Gennady Golovkin stick for fighting Kell Brook. I know Kell Brook's a much smaller man who's fighting 2 divisions below, but let's be honest, Golovkin can't get an opponent for love nor money. He's tried, in my opinion, to make the fight with Eubank Jr. He's tried, in my opinion, to make the fight with Billy Joe Saunders. Danny Jacobs and Canelo, they don't seem interested in the fight either. Golovkin's got to fight. He's got to stay active. He's got to be in big fights. And, clearly Kell Brook is not the creme of the middleweight division. But, Golovkin's taking the fight. It's there. It's big money for him. It's big exposure for him. I'm not going to hate on him for that. I am going to give Kell Brook credit for stepping up and having the balls to take a fight of this nature. It's very commendable. And I am going to give Eddie Hearn credit here. I like the way he's played things. I personally like the way that he didn't get into a Twitter slanging match with Eubank Sr. I thought he showed professionalism, not discussing his clients' financial details, over Twitter with Chris Eubank Sr. And I think he has showed that, yes, he will pay big money. Yes, he will make offers to fighters, but he's not going to have his pants pulled down. He's not going to pay Jesse Vargas $3 million to come over. He's not going to pay Chris Eubank Jr. £5 million to fight Golovkin. I think he's performed well, Eddie Hearn, and he's made a good fight. I'm sure we can discuss Golovkin, Kell Brook at great length in other videos. I personally am left here thinking that Jesse Vargas is a bit of a mug. I think he's missed a great opportunity from financially, and I think Chris Eubank Sr. has proved himself such a difficult guy to be with. He's got the potential to damage his son's career if he keeps on like this. Kell Brook, Golovkin, it's made. What do you guys think? Do you give Kell Brook a chance? I'm sure we'll discuss it stylistically over and over and over again on this channel. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, tell me why. Leave your comments in the section below. And if you're new to the channel, please do hit subscribe. There's going to be a lot of discussion of this fight in the days and weeks to come. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.